This year, my entire life has been consumed with my baby. My best friend says, tonight, no more baby talk. It punches me straight in the gut. I feel like I'm the boring person to my friends and have nothing to contribute.
I think this is something that every mum goes through.
My best friend sometimes makes comments when we are all out for dinner, like with the girls. She says, okay, tonight, no more baby talk. It punches me straight in the gut. This year, my entire life has been consumed with my baby. I was on family leave and just started back at work now. At this point of my life, all of it revolves around my baby. I feel confused and don't know who I am anymore. And I feel like I have nothing else to talk about. And to my friends who I love dearly, I just think I'm boring to them. Normally, I wouldn't care what people think of me, but her opinion of me really matters to me. My best friend does want to have kids, but not for a few years. I guess my question is, how do I navigate this friendship since we are both at different stages of our life? How do I navigate the comments? How do I find myself again? I sometimes miss the old me, the freedom and the things that I used to be able to do, but I especially miss the old me when I feel like I'm the boring person to my friends and have nothing to contribute.
I love this question because I think that this is something that so many mums go through. I mean, every mum. I think this is something that every mum goes through. After I first had Marley, every conversation I had with my friends was mostly around being a mum or around something that she had done or something that had happened. And it's true, like your entire life becomes the fact that you're like this conduit for this baby. Like everywhere you go, they come with you. Everything you do, they're part of it. And it's divisive, right? Because some of you listening, we always get comments where it's like, well, I didn't just become my baby. You know, I still was my own person. I still held on to some semblance of my own identity. If you're able to do that, that's fucking amazing, because for a lot of other women, it's just simply not the case. And I know for me, there would be times where we would come and do this podcast and like this podcast was the only thing in my life that was non-baby related. And I say that because even though I do Tony May, Marley came and Lola, they came with me to work. We set up a creche in the office and my niece and nephew were in there as well with Lola and Marley. And it was wild. So I get it.
It's a wild time of life.
I think back on that and I'm like, how the fuck did we do that?
I think back on that and I think, how the fuck did you do that?
Like I had her in a bouncer under the table while still working. Crazy. So I get it. And I think firstly, give yourself a bit of empathy. You're not boring. This life is, I know it can seem sometimes boring when you're talking about it because you're in Groundhog Day, but you're also not going to be in this phase of life for forever. This is a very finite piece of like time in your life. The other thing I would say is be really honest with your friends. And I don't think she means it the way that it's coming across, the way you're interpreting it and the way that you're receiving this information. She would be devastated if she realized that saying that made you feel the way it makes you feel. She doesn't understand that you've had this massive loss of identity. She doesn't understand that like the person that you are and the person who you used to feel like you were, they kind of feel like worlds apart at the moment. Having conversations with our friends who haven't been through, you know, the transition of having children really, I think, opens it up and allows you to be honest around your feelings. It also gives them the opportunity to be a little bit more empathetic about it. But also, I think on the flip side, having a bit of sense around you that sometimes the conversation has to gravitate away from it just being babies to allow your friends to also feel as though that they are able to talk about the things that's happening in their life. Just having that mutual empathy for each other is so, so important.
It's not like you would ever say to your friend group, because it sounds like I'm getting the impression in this group of girls that go out to dinner, like this close group, I'm getting the impression that she might be the only one with a baby.
Yeah.
But you would never say to them, you would never sit down and say, all right, no more talking about fucking, don't want to talk about dating. Like,
no more dating, guys.
Yeah, you wouldn't ever say that to them for them to not talk about what's going on in their life. So I do think that's a conversation you need to have. And I get it. When you go through a phase of life where nothing else is happening, there is nothing else to talk about because you're not doing anything else. You are a life source for the baby. You are literally keeping a human alive. Like that is a huge responsibility and it is going to consume all of your time.
I just have so many memories of this point in my life. Like it's so hard because I think every single mum goes through this. There's even been times where like, for example, I was reading, I won't say the podcast, I was reading reviews recently and some of the comments was like, enough, we know you're having a baby, enough, we know you've just had a baby. And we would receive the same things. When I just had Marley and Lola, some of the fucking reviews we would receive would be like, you're not the first person in the world to have a baby, Laura. And I was like, I know. I get it. I know I'm not the first person, but it's the first time I've done it. And it's literally the only thing I think about at the moment. In fact, trying to think about anything else feels mentally exhausting.
But what you
So-
have to remember is the people that are writing that don't have kids, and there's 10
No.
times more people that are probably listening to you because of the conversations you're
To
having.
be honest, though, sometimes it is people who have had kids, but it's their kids are older. It's sometimes women who hold this kind of like they hold a standard for other women, and it's the standard that they were held to. There's just a lack of empathy all around. Honestly, I think the only way that you can navigate this conversation is to just be super honest with your friends and say the next time that that is said, you don't have to do it in a way that's to make them feel bad. Absolutely do not do it in a way that's passive aggressive because it's going to make you sound a little bit crazy. I think just say, guys, I know that baby chat must be so boring for you sometimes. And I'm so sorry if I do monopolize the conversation talking about my child. But I'm really struggling with even feeling as though I have anything else to talk about. Like I am struggling because I don't think I have anything of interest or anything of value to add to the conversation because it feels like I'm living a totally different life. So it's the only thing that I'm experiencing. So it's the thing I talk about. I do believe genuinely, with that being said, your friends love you and they're going to treat this with a little bit more care and sensitivity.
This is also why friendships change and navigate at different times. It's also why people, when they have children, get into mothers groups so that they know that they have a commonality, a similarity with the other people that they're hanging out with, and you can all compare and you can talk about the same things. You can complain, you can show each other photos, whatever it is. This is the sole reason that friendships change in life. Doesn't mean that you have to not be friends with this group at all, but 100% you need to let them know, especially your best friend, because you've referenced her a few times. So you are saying like her opinion matters to me. I value it. I feel like I'm not enough for her in that group. Have a conversation with her and say, yeah, exactly what you said, Laura. Like I've just got like nothing else. I know it's probably boring for you, but it's important to me. And I don't have anything else happening right now.
Do you know what's also really hard? When you're like the pioneer of something in a friendship group, when you're the first person to do it, it's so hard because you don't have the other people to then have that conversation with. But I guarantee you in 3 or 4 years' time, if your friends also choose to have children, that's all they're going to be fucking talking about. And then you're going to be talking about, oh God, we're talking about babies again and my kids are 5. Like this is boring chat. It's what happens. And actually, interestingly, I was having a conversation with a friend recently.
Do
And
you have other friends?
I have. Dare I?
Oh my God.
Well, funnily enough, I have friends who are mums so that I can bore them with my mum chat. I was talking to her around her experience with her daughter who has an anxiety disorder, but she was diagnosed very, very young. And she said, it was so isolating because none of my friends and none of the people in my friendship group had been through it yet, and nobody had any understanding for it. Nobody had any care to talk about it. And I felt like we were just, as a family, suffering alone and didn't know what to do or how to navigate this period. And then 5 years on, other people in that friendship group, their children were then, dealing with different versions of either an anxiety or disorder or other things that, teenage girls go through. And then everyone was talking about it and everyone had a lot of empathy for each other because so many more people had been through it. And she said that, she had this lunch with them this one day and was like, look, I don't want this to be a big deal. And I don't want you to think that I have hang-ups about this. She's like, but when I went through this, no one was there for me. No one wanted to even talk about it. But now you're going through it and it's all we talk about. And she's like, I just want everyone to know how that felt. It was a super isolating time for me. That when I heard that, I was like, wow, that is so hard because, we do it to each other in different, not just about parenting, but about lots of things. Sometimes, we find it difficult to kind of sit in someone else's problems if we've not experienced it ourselves. But it's really important to give people the grace when they're going through massive life changes, and parenting, holy shit, it doesn't get bigger than that.
The other part is because you have asked like a few questions to this. I do feel a lot of pressure on myself to solve your life problems. But how do I find myself again? That's really tough. Now, I am not a parent, but every person in my life, because all my friends, almost all of them, probably only a couple, 2 maybe, Keisha's one of them, that don't have kids. So I've been surrounded by them for years and I've been there with my friends as they go through it. The common denominator is time. It's like you have to dedicate that time to suckling and keeping your child alive. And then you will eventually...
You don't do the suckling, just FYI.
But Laura, you're a prime example. I remember, you never stopped working in terms of like you took the kids to the pod and Tony May and stuff, but you didn't have a lot of other things in your life because you were so tired. You would go home, you'd be with Matt, you'd put the kids to bed. They were on a time frame. And as the years went past, I feel like you found yourself again in a way. You're doing so much more now in loads of aspects, in terms of travel, in terms of other jobs you're taking on, and whatever it is. And I think it just comes with physically being able to do it. So you will find yourself again and you will find your passion. It might just look a little bit different to what it was before you had a baby.
Absolutely. Give yourself grace. It's time. I think the greatest, I mean, everyone has advice for you when you're a new parent, but the best advice I ever received, one was don't listen to people's advice. And the second,
Wear a condom.
And the second was everything's a phase. Like this is just,
Yeah.
as soon as you think you've got something nailed, like shit hits the fan. And as soon as shit's hitting the fan, soon enough, it changes again. Like you're never in the same phase. And I don't think that that just is relating to the kids and where the kids are at. It also relates to you and how you're navigating the kind of journey of being a parent. The only other thing I want to say on this before, like I feel like I've said everything I could possibly say, is I know everyone's experience is very, very different. Every time we talk about anything to do with being a new mom, or I say like, you know, your identity becomes wrapped up in a child, somebody listening to it will say, well, that didn't happen to me. I still had my sense of self. Or, you know, you can't talk about parenting in grand sweeping statements. And the reason for that is because everybody experiences it different. And so all I'm saying is that my experience was that I very much felt like I became so intertwined with my children for those first couple of years that my identity was my children. It was so muddied.
Yeah.
And there are people who feel on the more extreme end of that, and there are people who are going to feel, you know, at the bottom of it. But no, like none of this is right or wrong. None of it. Everyone's just doing the absolute best that they can, and give yourself as much grace as you possibly can give yourself. And if that means that you need to talk about it, to get it off your chest, to feel like you're making some sense of this absolute fucking wild identity shift you're going through, then find friends or speak to your friends in a way that give them the understanding, because that's what you need for your healing journey as well.